Hey everyone, and welcome back. I'm Rick Fussell and this is the Engraving Workshop. In today's video, we're going to be installing the double vanity that I built in the previous video. That's coming up next here at the Engraving Workshop. With the vanity build finished, the next step is paint. I started by removing all the hardware, then prepped everything for a clean finish. For primer, I'm using Behr's Kitchen Bath and Trim Primer, 2 coats of it. And for the top coat, I'll be applying Behr's Cabinet Door and Trim Enamel in a satin finish. I'm using my Graco airless sprayer to apply the first coat of primer, then sanding everything down with 320 grit to smooth out the surface before applying the second coat. Once both primer coats are on and sanded, I'll follow the same routine with the top coat. Spray, sand, and repeat. It's a little extra work, but it makes a big difference in the final finish. Before spraying, I taped off everything I didn't want painted, like the hinge holes, and I made sure to label all the drawers and doors so everything goes back where it belongs. Trust me, that little bit of prep work saves a whole lot of confusion later. With the vanity finished and painted, it's time to shift focus to the bathroom itself, starting with removing the old mirror. First step is safety. I taped off the entire mirror in case it broke during removal, you never know, and also used gloves and safety glasses. To access the top edge, I had to take down the light fixture above the mirror, and surprise, surprise, no electrical box behind it, just wires hanging out of the drywall. Not exactly up to code, so I'll be fixing that later. With the fixture out of the way, I installed the shims along the top and one side of the mirror. The other side was tucked into a corner, and the bottom edge, that was trapped behind the backsplash. What could possibly go wrong? This part got a little tense. I could only access 2 edges, so I went slow, just working the shims in with a little tap-tap here, a little tap-tap there. The mirror was glued on with roofing mastic, so you can actually hear it slowly peeling away from the drywall as you work. Once the first round of shims bottomed out, I added a few more and gently pried the mirror out a bit at a time. Eventually, it gave way. Then I used a box cutter to slice through the caulk along the bottom edge, right where it was stuck behind the backsplash, and finally lifted it free. Now it's time to tackle that old particle board vanity and give it a one-way ticket to the burn pile. First, I grabbed a cutout bucket to catch any excess water, then removed the P-trap. It's attached with a simple compression coupling, so a quick turn with some channel lock pliers and it came right off. With the drain disconnected, I shut off the hot and cold water valves, then unscrewed the supply lines from the shutoffs. Next up, I used a box cutter to slice through all the caulk, both around the vanity top and where the cabinet meets the wall. The countertop wasn't screwed down, just held in place with caulk, so I was able to pry it up and lift it right off. From there, it was just a matter of backing out a few screws from the wall and hauling the whole vanity out of the bathroom, straight to its final resting place in the burn pile, a fitting in for soggy particle board cabinetry. So I know I didn't film it, but this used to be the door that led out to our pool and I framed it in with a pressure-treated 2x4 bottom plate, a few studs, and sieved the exterior with OSB. This is now the new home for the double vanity. With the old vanity gone, I'll need to remove some of the drywall to access the plumbing and reroute it over to the new wall to serve both new sinks. There's also an existing GFCI outlet that I'll tie into. I'm adding a new box so that each sink will have its own GFCI protection. This existing box will be tucked behind a wall cabinet when it's all said and done, still accessible but out of sight. This was where the old 3-way switches were that we're no longer using. Next up, drywall removal. To keep things clean and consistent, I decided to cut the drywall flush with the old door opening. That gives me a nice straight joint to work with later. I'm removing drywall from both the old vanity wall and the new one, but I left the corners intact to cut down on mud work later. With my cut lines laid out, I used an oscillating tool to carefully remove the drywall. Fun surprise here, some of it was screwed in and some of it was nailed. Gotta love a good mix of building techniques. With the drywall out of the way, I started running the new conductors for the outlet. I'm using 12 gauge 2-wire with a ground. I began at the new box, leaving about 8 inches of extra wire to work with, then secured the line to the wall using Romex staples. From there, I pulled the wire toward the existing GFCI box. To make a clean run, I drilled 3/4 inch holes through the studs using a spade bit, creating a simple raceway for the conductor. Of course, before doing any electrical work, I shut off the power to the bathroom circuit at the main panel. Always better to double check that one. Now for the plumbing. There was already a roughed-in hot and cold line plus a drain in the new wall. It was originally meant for the outdoor kitchen we never got around to building. So instead of letting it go to waste, I decided to repurpose it for the new double vanity. That meant the old vanity plumbing just needed to be capped off. Using a reciprocating saw, I cut the 1.5 inch drain pipe, leaving just enough room to glue on a cap and seal it up inside the wall. Next up, I tackled the drain line in the new vanity wall. There was an old 90-degree elbow that ran out through the exterior wall, so I took the reciprocating saw and cut it on both sides to tie in right there. Once it was loose, I pulled the pipe out from the outside. With both the old and new drain lines prepped, I turned my attention to the water lines. Using a small pipe cutter, I cut the existing copper lines about 1 inch out from the block wall, just enough room to come back later and install caps. I shut off the water to the whole house and opened a faucet to drain out the pressure, but I still used a bowl to catch whatever was left in the lines. Once cut, I cleaned up the copper with some sandpaper. Now look, I'm an old G boomer. I came up on brazing, flux, and a torch, but apparently now we've got these fittings called SharkBite. No flame, no mess, just measure the depth, mark the pipe, and slide the fitting on with a twist. That's it. I was skeptical, but they're rated at 400 psi and my well system only runs 30 to 50. So yeah, I think we're good. For the old drain, I went back to the classics. PVC cap, primer, cement, and done. The plumbing for the old vanity wall is officially capped off and sealed. Now I started prepping the new wall. First, I cut and removed the old exterior supply lines. Then I installed a 2 inch to 1.5 inch reducer on the main drain, followed by a Y fitting to pick up both sink drains. With the rough drain roughed in for the first sink, I added a 90-degree elbow to run over to the second. Now let's pause for a disclaimer. I'm not a licensed plumber, electrician, or drywaller. I didn't sleep at a Holiday Inn, but I did sleep with the supervisor, and that's got to account for something, right? So it might not all be to code, but it will absolutely work. To get the drain over to the second sink, I had to notch out a few studs. It's a non-load bearing wall, so I was comfortable doing it. Oh, and no, I'm not an engineer either, but I knew better than to try running that line through the vanity. The supervisor would not have approved. So the studs got notched and I cut them with a proper 1/4 inch per foot drop so the drain would flow as it should. And there it is, a fresh new drain rough-in with a 1.5 inch stub outs, ready for the new double vanity. Next up, hot and cold water supply lines. So along with those newfangled SharkBite fittings, there's also the stuff called PEX. I'm using PEX A. I think that's the one with the crimp connections. I started by using a 1/2 inch SharkBite transition fitting to go from copper to PEX. Once you're in PEX, the rest of the fittings are pretty standard, except they're barbed and you crimp a band around them. That meant picking up a crimping tool for about $35, and I've got to say, worth every penny of it. For the risers, I transitioned to brass using a 2 inch long threaded nipple. These come through the wall and are capped off for now. Once I pressure test the system, I get the vanity installed, I'll swap those caps out for shutoff valves. Quick tip, when applying Teflon tape, always wrap it clockwise so you don't end up unthreading it when you make your connection. I also used a little pipe dope for good measure. And just like that, the riser for the first sink are done. To get over to the second sink, I came off the first riser with a T-fitting and a 90-degree elbow. You can see me here using the crimping tool to lock everything in. It's that easy. The PEX pipe is color-coded, blue for cold, red for hot, which makes things even easier to keep track of. I drilled a 3/4 inch hole through the studs using a spade bit to route the lines across. For support behind the wall, I cut up some scrap 2x4s for blocking. If the grizzly green color looks familiar, that's because these leftovers came from my old miter saw station. I finished it off by making the same brass transition at the second sink, another 2-inch nipple and cap, and just like that, the water supply piping is complete. I turned the water back onto the house and let it run and pressurize for about 24 hours to make sure there were no leaks. So far, bone dry, and I'll take that as a win. Hey folks, before we get too far along in the build, I wanted to show you the lights that are literally keeping this workshop running. The Barina 6500K LED lights. These things are brighter than a squirrel in a power line. I've got these mounted all over the shop, above the bench, over the tools, even in the corners the spiders thought they had to themselves. They're 6500K, which means you get a crisp daylight white light, perfect for seeing wood grain, tool lines, measuring tapes, or just not for tripping over the dog. They snap together like Legos for grown-ups, plug and play. Each light has its own cord, but you can daisy chain up to 8 of them on a single run. It took me longer to find my drill than it did to hang them. Now listen, I'm not saying these lights have made me a better woodworker, but they've made my mistakes a lot easier to see now, especially when the supervisor walks in to inspect. No matter what your mounting situation, they've got you covered. The light fixture comes with 4 plastic mounting anchors, 2 large flathead screws, 2 J-hooks, 2 hanging chains, and 1 extended pull chain for the pull switch. The mounting holes on the light fixture set approximately 45.35 inches apart, which made mounting virtually easy. It also comes with a cord on one side of the fixture and an outlet on the other, so you can easily daisy chain them together. If you're setting up a shop, upgrading from those sad, flickery fluorescent tubes, or just tired of working in the dark, do yourself a favor and check out the Barina 6500K LEDs. They're bright, easy to install, and reasonably priced. I wired mine up to a wall outlet, but you can also plug them straight into each other and daisy chain them together and use the pull switch. However you roll, they've got you covered. I used to struggle to see my tape measure, but not anymore. With the Barina 6500K LED light fixture, it's like that big orange ball in the sky is right in my workshop. You can clearly see the difference between the lighting from the left side of my miter saw station to the right side of my miter saw station. There's no comparison. I'll leave a link in the video description below to where you can pick up these lights along with a discount code. It really helps out the channel, and it also helps you get your shop out of the shadows. Now let's get back to the build. With the plumbing rough-in complete, it was time to finish up the electrical. Originally, I planned to climb into the attic and re-pull the light conductor from its current location to the new one, but there was just one small problem. It's July in Central Florida. The attic might as well be the surface of the sun, so that plan changed real quick. Instead, I opted for an in-wall splice. I'm using the NSI in-wall cable splice. I'll leave a link in the video description. It comes with a male and female connector that plug together. No need to strip insulation, just cut the hot wire to 1 inch and the neutral and ground to 3/4 of an inch. Insert the wires into the conductor, place the cover on, then use a pair of channel lock pliers to press down and bite through the insulation. Once both ends are done, just snap the connectors together and that's it. I went the extra mile and wrapped the whole assembly in electrical tape, just for added peace of mind. That let me avoid the attic entirely and run the lighting conductor cleanly through the wall behind the new vanity. I installed 2 lighting boxes, one over each sink, and ran 14 gauge 2-wire with a ground to each box. While I was at it, I also decided to replace the bathroom exhaust fan and add an LED can light in the shower. Here I was able to run a fish tape from the exhaust fan over to the can light and again avoid any work in the attic. With all the electrical rough-in finished, it's time to insulate the new vanity wall and start hanging drywall. With all the rough-in work done, it was time to close up the wall. I used 1/2-inch drywall and started by laying out all my outlet box locations. Then I cut the openings with an oscillating tool, quick and accurate. This time around, I went all in with drywall screws, no nails, to keep everything tight to the studs. Once the drywall was up, I moved on to tape and mud. After a couple rounds of sanding, it was time to texture the wall to match the rest of the bathroom. I used my hopper to spray on an orange peel texture, watering down the mud to about the consistency of pancake batter. Medium air pressure works best. I like using an infinity or figure 8 pattern. It gives a more even, natural look. After the texture dried, I did the Supervisor a solid and grabbed a paintbrush. Normally that's her domain, but I needed to get the vanity wall painted so I could keep moving forward. The color? Mountain Dew. Yep, named after the kids' favorite drink. Apparently it's not just for cavities anymore. And finally, I get back to doing what I really love, woodworking, even though I don't think I'm certified at that either. Just when I thought I could finally start woodworking, I had to throw the electrician hat back on one more time. I decided to go ahead and install the new lights above the sink, partly because I needed better lighting and partly because it's easier to work when you can actually see what you're doing and you're not having to work over a vanity. Now, in hindsight, I should have used my Brana 6500K LED shop light, the sponsor of this video, but it's already mounted out in the workshop, so next time. Installing the new lights is pretty straightforward. I connected the fixture wires to the wall conductors using wire nuts, black to black for hot wire, white to white for neutral, and copper to copper for ground. With both lights installed and working, we're finally ready to start what I've been waiting for, woodworking. Step 1, leveling and installing the toe kick for the new vanity. With the toe kick in place, the first thing I did was level it in both directions to make sure we're starting off square and true. You'll notice there's about a 1-inch gap between the toe kick and the wall on both sides. That's intentional, since this vanity is going between two walls. I left space for the side panels and some scribe molding for the face frame later. I like to use shims to temporarily level the toe kick, but I don't leave them in. Once everything is dialed in, I replace the shims with scrap pieces of 3/4 inch plywood. I screwed those in from the inside of the toe kick using 1 1/4 inch screws. This gives the base a lot more surface area than just a skinny shim and makes the whole assembly more stable. Once the plywood is in place, I pull the shims out. I also screw the toe kick directly to the back wall so it's not going anywhere. Building and installing a separate toe kick like this is way easier than trying to level an entire cabinet with an integrated base. With the toe kick rock solid and level, all that's left to do is drop the cabinet carcasses into place, and just like that, the vanity install is underway. With the cabinet carcasses dropped into place, I needed to make sure everything was laid out symmetrically before cutting for plumbing. Getting the layout centered on both sides is crucial, especially since there's a gap between the cabinet and the wall that you have to factor into your measurements. Once I had everything lined up, I pulled the cabinets back off the toe kick and laid them down so I could mark the locations on the back of the panels. I measured in from the wall and up from the toe kick for accurate placement. For the cutouts, I used a hole saw bit, 2 inches for the 1.5-inch drain lines, and 1 inch for the 1/2 inch hot and cold water supply pipes. I always go about a 1/2 inch larger than the pipe to give a little wiggle room. Now here's a pro tip. Don't be a newbie and just drill straight through from one side. If you do, you're almost guaranteed to blow out the plywood on the back side. Instead, drill halfway through from one side, then finish the cut from inside the cabinet. That way, if you do get any tear out, it's on the back and no one will ever see it. With everything measured and cut out correctly, I'm now able to slide the cabinet all the way back against the wall, and inside the cabinet it should look something like this. Nice clean cuts, everything's lined up and ready to go. Next, I used a couple of F-clamps to pull all 3 cabinet boxes together. Once everything was lined up, I fastened them permanently with 1 1/4 inch screws, driving them through the inside of the drawer cabinet where they'll completely be hidden once the drawers go in. Since I had everything pre-assembled back in the workshop, the screw holes were already there, so it was just a matter of lining them up and locking them down. With the cabinets fastened together, I turned my attention to the face frame. To get a perfect fit, I used 1/4 inch plywood to make a scribe template. I clamped the top piece in place, then tacked the side templates with a little CA glue. That gave me a custom fit scribe that I could take back out to the workshop. Back at the bench, I laid the template over the face frame stock and traced my scribe lines. Then I used my DIY track saw setup to make a clean scribe cut on both sides. Inside the bathroom, I pulled the cabinet back off the toe kick and laid it on its back so I could install the face frame using the pocket holes I had already pre-drilled. That made lining things up and attaching it a whole lot easier. Once the face frame was on, I called in an extra set of hands, the Supervisor, and together we slid the cabinet back into place and checked everything for level. To secure it, I used my stud buddy. It's just a strong magnet that finds drywall screws in the studs and marked the stud locations with painter's tape. Then I drove screws through the cabinet into the studs using a few shims along the back to make sure the whole setup stayed plumb. Next up, I did some electrical trim out work. Now when you're installing a GFCI outlet, you've got to pay attention to the load terminals, because if you wire it wrong, the outlet won't be protected like it should be. The load terminals under the yellow tag are meant for continuing power to other outlets, not for powering the GFCI itself. The opposite side terminals are where you connect the hot and neutral wires that bring power to the outlet. Thankfully, everything's clearly labeled so you can match up the wall conductors accordingly. For my daughter's side, I installed a nightlight outlet, nice for those late night bathroom trips. And on my son's side, I installed a combo outlet with a USB-A and a USB-C ports, so he doesn't need an AC adapter for his phone or gadgets. The things we do for our kids, or should I say the supervisor does for her kids. Alright, next hat, plumber. Time to trim out the water and drain lines. With the water shut off to the house, I started by removing the caps on the supply lines. I cleaned the threads, reapplied Teflon tape and a little pipe dope, and then installed the final shutoff valves. These valves are a 1/2 inch on the inlet side and 3/8 inch on the outlet, standard size for faucet hookups. To tighten them, I used a pair of channel lock pliers to hold the threaded nipples steady, and then a pipe wrench to turn and tighten the valve. That way you don't risk spinning anything loose inside the wall. With both shutoff valves installed, I moved on to the drain line. I cut the drain line stub about 1 inch out from the back of the cabinet and installed a transition fitting, going from a slip connection to a compression fitting for the P-trap. Then I added discussion plates to clean things up around both the supply lines and the drain, and finally I repeated the process for the second sink. Next, I installed the backsplash around the top. Now the countertop is only temporarily in place at this point. I just needed to see how everything was going to line up before locking it down. I cut the backsplash to the exact width of the wall opening out in the workshop. Then using some silicone caulk, I applied a bead to the back and set it in place. I used my laser level to make sure it stayed perfectly straight. With the back piece in, I lifted the countertop and applied more silicone to the base and cabinet, being careful setting it in place, making sure I had about a 1/2 inch clearance on both sides. And yes, that was a little stressful. Who knows how much the supervisor paid for that top, but I knew if I cracked it, I'd be sleeping in the shop. After that, I measured and cut the left and right side backsplashes out in the workshop, then installed them the same way with silicone and a steady hand. Once everything was set, I caulked all the seams between the top, backsplash, and walls, and that really cleaned things up nicely. And with that, the top and backsplash are installed, which means it's finally time to unwrap the new toy. So as you've probably figured out by now, the supervisor is the one ordering all the new toys. That kind of decision making is way above my pay grade, which also explains why the Amazon truck seems to have its own reserved parking spot in front of my house. Now, I'm not exactly sure where these faucets came from, but hey, they look pretty, and apparently that's what matters. The installation instructions, yeah, let's just say they leave a lot to be desired. It's one of those figure-it-out-as-you-go situations. These are single-hole waterfall style faucets. For now, I've just got one sitting in place on the vanity while I'll sort everything out. Each faucet comes with its own flexible water supply lines and a threaded rod that runs down through the faucet base. Under the sink, a flange and a nut get tightened up using a little extended wrench they included with the kit, thoughtful at least. The drain is a pop-up style with a rubber washer, so no plumber's putty or silicone needed. The drain tailpiece threads in and gets tightened underneath with a plastic nut and another rubber washer. Once the faucet is secured, I connect the flexible supply lines to the hot and cold shutoff valves. Then I hook up the P-trap to the drain tailpiece. All compression fittings, nice and simple. The tailpiece is 1 1/4 inch and the P-trap comes with the reducer washer that fits right into the compression nut. And just like that, we have a waterfall. Then it's rinse and repeat literally for the other sink. Now that all the plumbing and electrical work is done, I can finally get back to what I actually enjoy, woodworking. I started with the drawer cabinet. Since I had labeled all the drawer boxes and fronts during the build, reassembly was straightforward. I began with the bottom drawer, reattaching the drawer front and hardware, then slid it into place. From there, I worked my way up. And yes, I broke out the latex gloves for this part. I didn't come this far just to smudge up clean drawers and doors. Then came my favorite drawer, the one I secretly marked with my brand just to drive the supervisor crazy. And hey, it's the little victories that make this job fun. Next, I installed the Faucets drawer fronts. Super simple. The mounting holes were already in place, so it was just a matter of lining things up, driving in the screws, and adding the handles. Now it's really starting to look like a vanity. All that was left were the doors. Since those were pre-installed and labeled too, I just had to reattach the hinges and the hardware and snap them back into place. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Here it is, the finished kit's bathroom makeover. What started as a simple vanity build turned into a full-blown renovation. Plumbing, electrical, drywall, and a little bit of therapy along the way. The custom vanity fits perfect between the two walls, complete with inset drawers, clean face frame lines, and soft closed doors. Because slamming doors is no longer an option, at least not for my kids. We've got matching waterfall faucets, USB outlets, and even a nightlight, because apparently just flipping a switch like we did in the 80s is no longer good enough. A separate toe kick made leveling a breeze, and those Faucets drawer fronts tie it all together. If you're wondering which door is my favorite, it's that one right there, the one I secretly branded just to annoy the supervisor. A sleek countertop and full backsplash wrap it all up, and the lighting above each sink not only works, it looks sharp too. So whether it's roughing in plumbing, dodging the attic in July, or installing a vanity built from scratch, this one's finally in the books, and most importantly, the supervisor approves. Well, that's going to wrap up this video. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, then please leave it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel and you like DIY and woodworking projects, then I highly recommend that you hit that subscribe button. It's free and painless, and I also ask that you ring that bell icon. That way you'll be notified of all our upcoming videos. To all my existing subscribers, I really appreciate all the support that you've been giving this channel. Now I'll leave links in the video description below to all the tools and equipment that I used on this build, and I'll also leave a link along with a discount code to the Barina LED light fixture in case you're interested in picking some up, which I highly recommend. I'm Rick with the Ingrain Workshop. Until next time, have a wonderful day and God bless.